David Rantisi here from Wake Up It's Football and with SB Nation. And let's take a look at the 2013 draft class for the Green Bay Packers. As mentioned already before in a previous video, the first round selection for the Green Bay Packers was Datone Jones, defensive end out of UCLA. He's going to be a great plug-in on that defensive line, hopefully for years to come. Now, let's take a look at the second round and on. You go with Eddie Lacy. What the general manager Ted Thompson did there was he traded back 6 spots, I believe it was, from 55 to 61. He traded it down with the 49ers, acquired an additional draft selection, and Eddie Lacy was still on the board at 61 for the Green Bay Packers, and that's the direction Ted Thompson went. Eddie Lacy out of Alabama, great running back. He's noted for his spin move. I think he's going to be that physical back for the Green Bay Packers that they really haven't seen for a while. They traded out of their third round selection, I believe, with the Dolphins to acquire a fourth, a fifth, and a seventh round selection as well. David Bakhtiari out of Colorado at offensive tackle should be another, a backup who could possibly start. We're going to see how that offensive line shapes up throughout preseason. It's going to be very interesting. A lot of tackles and guards now. They're adding depth. An additional player being J.C. Tretter out of Cornell at offensive guard. He was an additional fourth round selection. He could be an interior offensive lineman, either guard or center. Jonathan Franklin at running back, the Packers traded up to acquire him. Jonathan Franklin was touted to be a top 3 running back in this year's draft class, possibly a second round selection. When the Packers saw him there late in the fourth round, they had to go, pull the trigger on him, trade up for him. So Jonathan Franklin, breaking down the running backs now, could possibly be backing up Eddie Lacy as the number 2 back. And you're asking, what about DeJuan Harris? What about Alex Green? Well, I think DeJuan Harris is going to go into this preseason as the number 1 back. Eddie Lacy could be that number 2. Jonathan Franklin being number 3. Alex Green at 4. James Starks, I'm hearing, is being shopped around. Brandon Sain has been cut, and do not be surprised. Actually, 0% chance, I think, of Cedric Benson being re-signed. Some of the other draft selections: 5th round cornerback Micah Hyde, 5th round defensive tackle Josh Boyd, 6th round outside linebacker Nate Palmer. Between these guys, it's just going to be depth. Nobody that really stands out. Actually, in the 7th round, I was a little bit more excited with some of these names. Charles Johnson at wide receiver was a guy that they brought in before the draft. They interviewed him, got to know him a little bit more. Charles Johnson could be that number 4 receiver on the team, believe it or not. 4 or 5 between him and Jared Boykin. Kevin Dorsey, wide receiver, was also brought in, drafted in the 7th round. And then to round out the entire draft, Sam Barrington at outside linebacker. So overall, if you notice the pattern there, there was 2 defensive linemen, arguably 2 defensive ends in Datone Jones and Josh Boyd. You had 2 running backs in Eddie Lacy and Jonathan Franklin, 2 offensive linemen in David Bakhtiari and J.C. Tretter, 2 outside linebackers, 2 receivers. Ted Thompson did that on purpose. There's a pattern there for a reason. Depth is huge, and I think Ted Thompson went out and did a fantastic job in this year's draft class. He knew exactly what he was doing. He traded back to acquire many picks. I believe it was 11 draft selections. We had 8 to start out with, traded back a few times to acquire more draft selections. So Ted Thompson did a fantastic job. I think this draft class is going to be solid. Datone Jones could be a starter. Eddie Lacy, I think, is going to be our starting running back. J.C. Tretter and David Bakhtiari, depth guys who could eventually start. Bakhtiari more than Tretter. Franklin could be our second running back there. So the list can go on. The list can go on. I think the Packers did a phenomenal job. I want to know what you guys think. Throw your comments down on the entire draft class, who you guys liked, who you guys disliked, some of the moves that were made for trading up and trading down, all that stuff in the comments below. But again, David Rantisi here from Wake Up It's Football and with SB Nation.